everybody, and welcome to another Florida-friendly landscaping educational program. Today, we're going to study the shady side of your landscape. That's a whole different kind of area there. So we're going to discuss what can be done in those shady areas of your landscape. I am Lilly Browning. I work for Hernando County Utilities in water conservation. My email is LillyB, LILLYB, at hernandocounty.us. If you have any questions, feel free to email me. Or if you would like a PDF copy of this presentation, so you have the plants and their names on hand, you're welcome to email me, and then I will be glad to send that to you. Here are the 9 principles of Florida-friendly landscaping. We see these every week. We're gonna talk a lot today about right plant, right place, and cover some of these others as well. So let's talk about what is right plant, right place. Almost any plant will survive in your landscape if it is the right plant in the right place. When we say almost any plant, we mean for this area, for one thing. So Hernando County, if you're listening from Hernando County, a good place to start is knowing our horticultural gardening zone, and that is 9A. 9A covers a pretty big area all the way into Orlando, even up kind of into Jacksonville. But yet Ocala, Gainesville should be kind of in 8B. So it's not a straight line across. They base these zones on average high and low temperatures. They're working on other horticultural zones that takes humidity, salt air, things like that into consideration as well. But if it's a plant that is, known to grow in our zone, that's the first place to start. And then you got to look at your own yard and what do you have? Do you have sandy soil? Do you have clay soil? You may have a mixture in different areas and have microclimates. What we're going to be concentrating on today is those shady areas and what we can get to grow in those shady areas, and even bring a little color into those shady areas. I haven't talked about this for a while, so let me introduce you to this Florida-friendly landscaping guide to plant selection and landscape design. See, I have to read it every time too. It's a very long title, but I worked a lot using this book. I use it quite often, but I used it. All the plants that you will see here are in this book. This is a great place to begin, put together by the University of Florida experts. And we get ours printed from the Southwest Florida Water Management District for us, which is very nice of them to do so. So you may have one of these in your hand. They're free. And there are several ways to go about getting one. You can download one. That's what this link is here. If you don't want the actual copy that opens pages and turns in your hand. There's also an app for that on your phone. It's not really even an app. You don't have to download it. It's more like a web or a phone tool you can use on your phone. And that way you can get very specific. If you're at the nursery and you put in a certain plant, you can pull up information about it. You can find that on the University of Florida websites, the same place where you would find the PDF to download. As I said, the Southwest Florida Water Management District prints these for us, but you can also go online to them and go under resources, look for homeowners. It's on page 2 of homeowner resources that you'll find this book, and you put in your address. If you are within one of their 16 county, their district of the Southwest Florida Water Management District, they'll mail you one of those for free. It works. I know it works because when I was working from home during the 2020 season, I tried it and it did work. One came to my house. You could stop by the county extension office. Here is their phone number, 352-754-4433. That's in Hernando. They have copies of this book, as well as if you go to the Volunteer Master Gardener nursery here in Brooksville. They're there Wednesdays and Saturdays, about 8:30 to 12. They also have these books. If you take a rain barrel workshop of mine, you're going to end up with one of these books. There are multiple ways to get a hold of them. They are great, great resources. So in talking about, I'm sorry, I'm moving stuff around here. In talking about gardening in the shade, I'm just going to give you like one little design tip because I don't want to take up too much of your time. But if you see in this corner here, they actually went big and bold. Don't be afraid to go big and bold. And remember, green is a color too. I'm going to tell you how to bring other colors in your shady areas, but don't reject green as being a color. And sometimes you can have a lot of visual interest with and a lot of texture and with just big green type of coarse leaves. And see this area, they weren't afraid to put in a decorative, very large container here and a very large plant. Now there's a fine line there between what looks good and fills up the space and what is too big for the space. And you just kind of have to let your eye decide that. But don't automatically reject just filling up that space, even if it's with a lot of green. So we're going to jump right into plants for shade. As I wrap it up, I'm going to be talking more about what to do with your lawns in the shade. And you maybe, if you watch me for a long time, you're going to say, well, nothing. Well, I'm going to talk about if you absolutely insist on trying to have a lawn, your best chances at it. But let's talk about the pretty plants first. And let's talk, first we're going to highlight Florida native plants. These were not, a lot of these weren't discussed in the last time I did this class over a year ago. I have added up, several different plants for you. And this is by no means an exhaustive list. You could be here all day listening to me. I'm just kind of get you jump started. And again, refer to this book or get the app on your phone, the web tool on your phone. When you look at this, you do have to be careful because this is a statewide book. So don't just look at pretty pictures and think, ooh, I want that. Because you have to be careful, like this Royal Poinciana, it is only has an S. That means for South Florida. And its zones are 10B to 11. That's not us. So make sure it has a C in there for Central Florida and fits the zones. 9B is somewhere in their zone range. Here is this is a native plant that is pretty much at least as far north as Virginia and Pennsylvania. Some of the it may be further north. Some people have told me yes, it is. Even in New England. Oak leaf hydrangea. It is not your French, hydrangea with the pink flowers. This is a native, grows nicely in the shade, even when it's not blooming, when it doesn't have the nice big, they're not round either. They're going to be more oblong type of flowers, even when it is not, blooming. Look at these leaves. That's why it's called oak leaf. And they are big. And in the horticultural world, big leaves, we call that coarse. And they're just very interesting. Something about the way this grows in the shade and kind of spreads out and rambles about puts me in mind of a rhododendron or mountain laurel from up north. But it's a really nice plant that you can bring those pops of white into your shady area. This is another one of my favorite natives, even because the name is so cute. It's a little, I mean, little, it can spread. It says 1 to 3 feet in height, and it'll spread out further than that, you know, maybe 5 or 6 feet. Kunti, it can do fine out in the sun, out in a median and a highway. It can also do fine in the shade in your yard. They're slow growing. That's one thing, you know, we will say for them. They are pretty slow growing. They have a palm-like look, but they're not a palm. They're not in the palm family. They are in the cycad family, like your sago palms. Sagos are not native. Further south, you can go grow something that looks similar to these called cardboard palms, which are also not native, but they have wider type fronds, if you want to call them that, branches, leaflets. I love these little kunti. They're just really some of my favorite, and they fill up a space very nicely. I don't have on here though. They, believe it or not, even though they're just green, they are great for wildlife. Lizards and things can run all over the place. You know, if you put them together there, they provide shelter. In South Florida, they are a host plant for the Attila butterfly. And that is actually a sort of an accidental success story. That butterfly was nearly extinct. And as an aside, I don't know how it began, but when people or municipalities started passing ordinances that you have to have a certain amount of native plants in public areas. And I guess these are pretty easy to propagate. So for however it happened, kunti became fairly easily available, especially for landscapers, you know, to get a hold of and fill up space as well. So there was more of it around, and poof, the Attila butterfly came back. We're not going to see it up here in Central Florida, but in South Florida, you will have that guy. So that is a really fun, you know, success story there. Walter's Viburnum, if you're looking for screening, here's a great plant. And I've seen it growing wild in undeveloped areas in and amongst beautyberry. They look very nice together. It has these lovely white winter to spring flowers. And it has the small fruit for wildlife, nesting for wildlife. And you want to have a good amount of space. Years ago, when I worked for the county extension office, and we were in these double wide trailers, which were where their Master Gardener nursery is now, kind of, the nursery's kind of taken over the entire area, where it used to be a series of 3 double wides kind of attached together there. And there was some Walter's Viburnum planted in front of the trailers. Well, our facility maintenance people would get aggravated at how often they had to trim those. So maybe not up against a house, but for screening in the back area of your yard, you know, great plant to have. Here's the beautyberry that I mentioned. These you see growing wild. Some people think, well, that's a weed. What's the definition of a weed? A plant dealing with an unhappy person? Or I say a weed is a matter of opinion. I have taken these, the back area of my yard was left wild. The builder, I had a half an acre, the builder put the house on the first 1/4 acre and the Bahia grass lawn. Sorry, left the back 1/4 acre pretty natural. So I had these popping up, I still do, all over the place. And so I take some of the seedlings, and you can easily make a very attractive and formal looking hedge or solitary, you know, little tree with these. So easy to grow, so very easy to grow. You almost can't kill them. They're deciduous. They're going to start losing their leaves this time of year. My husband just recently pointed out to me that one of them that I have, he goes, look, there's no leaves. And I said, yeah, that's fine. But the sticks are all there with berries on them still. It's good for wildlife, these berries. It's not the first thing the birds are going to rush to eat. You can eat them. Native Floridians, you know, have recipes. You can go online, beauty berry jam, stuff like that. But it's going to be, you know, a few beauty berries and a whole lot of sugar. Edible, not necessarily the sweetest, most wonderful tasting berry out there. So even the birds know that, and you'll notice they don't even start coming around for them. It's like the vegetables on their plate. Well, they'll eat that last. And they're kind of waiting out these berries to turn black and become beauty berry raisins, really, so that there's more sugar concentration in them. But these are, I just think they're absolutely gorgeous and great to have around. And before they put out these berries in the fall, you can have pink, sometimes white flowers all over them as well. Saw palmettos. You're going to look at these and almost think weed because it is so prevalent here in Florida. You don't give it enough credit. You know, like because it grows well here, your mind automatically discredits it, like it's too easy. I don't want to deal with it. Native Floridians, they have their, you know, it's interesting to me. People coming new here, you know, there's a lot of things they don't know and they might have preconceived notions. So we deal with that. And then I deal with native Floridians who have preconceived notions, wives' tales, things like that. So native Floridians are not always a fan of saw palmettos. Why? Because they insist rattlesnakes are in them. Rattlesnakes could be in them, that's true. No, so can any other kind of snake. In fact, they are home to so many different types of wildlife. I have left clumps closer to the house and in the fenced-in area where my little tiny doglets run. We keep those cut down because I don't want coyotes hiding in them. But further out, you can even just hear all the activity going on in those things. Don't get too close and crawl in there. Maybe there is a rattlesnake in there. But more than 100 bird species can make a home from this saw palmetto. 27 different types of mammals, squirrels, all types of things, 25 amphibians, 61 reptiles, and countless insects use it for food and cover. So please just keep that in mind. Don't just see it and think, I got to clear it out of the way. And it's even a larval host for the monk skipper and palmetto skipper butterflies, and the nectar plant for the Bartram's scrub hair streak, and also bees and butter and flower flies, also known as hoverflies. They're little flies that look like bees. They visit and they're all pollinators. Bears also eat the fruit from this as well. So don't automatically just discount. If you have these, I mean, I don't really know anyone who's going to go to the store and buy one. You can, but it seems like mostly you just already have them. And if you do, please, you know, continue to let some be there. Here's a nice little, I'm fairly new to this native plant, but I have several in my yard and I really love it. It really starts to spread out. It's great for a butterfly garden to kind of, you know, fill it in. The scorpion tail. It's a nectar plant for many, many different types of butterflies. It self-spreads by seeds. It's going to have these little flowers year round. It'll probably freeze, but come back. And, you know, just a nice little fill-in area for your butterfly or wildflower garden. This is a close-up I took of the flowers, and you can see why they call it scorpion tail. Here's another great hedge or small tree that's a native that'll do well in the shade. So wax myrtle, sun or shade. It's going to get pretty tall. If you have an opportunity, if your ligustrums are dying out, I would suggest replacing them with this native if you can get a hold of it. It is, again, it's not going to do anything that really stands out and says, woohoo, look at me. It's not going to produce, you know, major colorful flowers and not produce anything. But it's going to make a nice foundation hedge or small tree for you and provide for wildlife at the same time. So it is a great plant to have, this wax myrtle. Wild coffee. I haven't put many Latin names in this presentation, but I love this Latin name. When you pair it with the common name, the wild coffee, Psychotria nervosa, it's just one of my favorites. So maybe don't try to make, you know, a coffee out of this unless you really, really, really know what you're doing. It can grow naturally in you know, natural areas, but it also will be fine in shady areas in your yard. Look at these leaves. I mean, talk about texture and coarse and bold leaves. And it, you know, has these nice white flowers. People tend to confuse this wild coffee, this native, with a invasive non-native called coral ardisia, which, you know, to the trained eye does look different. The coral ardisia has smaller leaves, not near as not lined like this at all, and has more like scalloped edges. Just don't get those two confused. Chances are, with the nature of exotic invasives, if you're seeing something that you think looks like this and has red berries this time of year, it's probably the coral ardisia. You can send me a picture at my email if you're, you know, want some ID for it. Here's one of the hollies, a native holly, a Dahoon holly, nice red berries. You can make a nice small tree or a hedge out of it. You know, red fruit in the fall and winter, it attracts bees and birds. Has nice white spring flowers. This is one of the ones that will look great in a formal landscape, you know, even in a deed restricted community. I do have a class, if you look back on Hernando County Government YouTube, or you go to my Facebook page, I have a class, native plants for formal gardens. And so if you are in a deed restricted community and they have very high standards of what everything should look like, go back and watch that one, because there are a lot of native plants that can fit well into a formal landscape as well as less formal. Here's a fire bush. It does well in the sun or shade. The reason I put the Latin name for this one is because there is a non-native fire bush. Its flowers are going to be more orange. I think the bush gets taller. But if you're looking for the native, you want to make sure you get the Impatiens. It's very easy to grow. In fact, I just read yesterday, you know, some of those who keep their eye out for, they are, you know, invasive type plants, maybe looking at this one as kind of weedy, but I love it. And it, you know, it's a native. So I guess be careful. I don't see it becoming very weedy in Central Florida because it freezes. It freezes back to the ground, but then it comes back in the spring. And what are those red tubular flowers going to bring you? Hummingbirds for sure, yes. And mine has a lot of the yellow sulfur butterflies all over it. And this is the time of year where it's fruiting. So it's going to attract birds and other type of wildlife as well. You know, could get 20 feet tall, but probably not here in Central Florida. Like I said, because it's not going to have time to, it's going to be a warm weather plant, then it's going to freeze, and then it's going to come back from the roots. Simpson Stopper. I get confused. I hear conflicting reports, but this book right here tells me, yes, it's a native. So we're going to go. There's probably native varieties, non-native varieties of Simpson Stopper. Again, if you're looking for screening, this is a great way to go. Get 6 to 10 feet tall or taller, a good 15 to 20 feet spread wide, and has edible fruit. I don't know anyone who has ever tried to eat it, and we just leave it for the birds and the squirrels and the other wildlife. And it does have year-round flowers, and it also attracts bees and butterflies. Another thing I have seen it attract in abundance. So this may play a part in where you decide to place it in your yard if you have it, is love bugs. I mean, I don't know why they were all over this bush. So keep that in mind. It might not be a good ripe away bush for you. Of course, excuse my cough drop, I'm trying. It's allergies, don't worry. When we think shade, people automatically think ferns. Well, I'll just fill up that area with ferns. And here is a list of, some of our native ferns. It's so difficult to make sure that you get the right fern. So you're going to have to deal with a native nursery that really knows what they're doing. Mostly what you're going to see around here and be tempted to do is take the ferns you already see growing everywhere in abundance and just, transplant them. Been guilty of it before I knew better. My mother was guilty of it before she knew better, passed it all around to all of us. And now we all have this Boston fern. I don't remember exactly. It's some scientific name. Sometimes it's called sword ferns, but these are the scientific names of the safe sword ferns. If you go out in your yard and it's growing in the, in a lot next to you or something, chances are really high that it's the invasive kind. You can pull it out, pull a piece out, and if it has these orange balls on the roots, then it is the invasive Boston fern. So probably really, really, really hard to actually get rid of, but please don't purposefully propagate it around. In fact, I got my brother lives in Pennsylvania, and he bought a fern that's going to stay inside in the house in Pennsylvania. It's probably not much, in much danger of spreading anywhere there. But he said it was called a macho fern. I didn't know what I knew about it. I had never heard of a macho fern, but apparently that's a South Florida term. And he said he was told it was native and endangered. So first of all, that raised some red flags for me. Why would you take an endangered plant and sell it, to somebody in a different area up north? That didn't make a whole lot of environmental sense to me. But I said it's highly likely. I don't know if he pulled any out yet to see if it has any of those orange balls, that they actually just sold you the invasive Boston fern. And of course, I have an issue with that too, if they're propagating it and selling it around. Like I said, in Pennsylvania, it's met the end of the line, most likely. But the transportation of it, did it get spread around that way? So just, I guess the moral of the story is be very, very, very careful with the ferns that you use in your shaded areas. Going away from natives for a minute, let's go into the Florida-friendly non-native plants that work great in the shade. Our jasmines always do wonderful in the shade. They tolerate sun and shade, and most plants adapt to shade by becoming darker green. And why? Well, because they are trying to, hold within themselves more chloroform, because they don't get as much photosynthesis. And they're also the leaves are going to tend to get bigger for the same reason, so they can try and attract as much photosynthesis as possible. So a plant that can, do well either sun or shade will act differently in those different situations. Confederate jasmine. If you like that sweet smell of jasmine, you can have it there. Dwarf Asiatic jasmine is a fantastic ground cover. It's not going to give you any flowers, but boy, will it fill in a space and stay dark green. You're not going to want to walk on it. It's not going to be comfortable to walk on, but filling in a space where grass won't grow in shady areas, it'll just look good. All you'll have to do, it might get a little aggressive. It might really start trying to climb up that tree, but a weed eater takes care of that, takes care of it around the edges, and very low maintenance, and it's easier to find. It's easier to find any of these non-natives than the natives. I'll get into where you could, your resources to find some of the native plants. Here it now, what says the South more than this big old live oak and azaleas in March, February or March? Absolutely gorgeous. And this picture is, well, it's in a very old place. It's at Seagate Hill Manor House where I took this picture. So these old azaleas, Carew azaleas with the, kind of pinkish colors and white. They just look gorgeous. But azaleas, you see more of them in, what you consider the older towns, but the more inland areas in Florida. The city of Brooksville itself, where based around where the courthouse is, not just if your address is Brooksville. Jade City, Inverness, Ocala, probably Sanford and all, those inner small towns. They're more of in an oak hammock. So they naturally have a lower pH, more clay-like soil. So things like azaleas do better there. I know some people who have, fine azaleas in Spring Hill and sandy areas, but that they're usually older, more established, older in Spring Hill terms, and Spring Hill is only 50 years old. But where some, the ground has been, over years been able to compost and have some good ground there. I'm just saying it's easier to do it in the oak hammocks than out in the sand, pine ridge kind of areas. And now we have all sorts of different kinds of azaleas, some that, just bloom whenever they feel like it, some fall blooming ones. There are also native azaleas out there. I don't want to discount those. There are wonderful native azaleas who have really interesting flowers. They're not just the brown little flower. They are, very interestingly shaped and yellow and orange. So if you're interested in native azaleas, you can look for those as well. Here's one of the few bulbs we can do pretty well here in Florida. Great to put in the shade and under a tree is caladiums. And oh my gosh, they come in every color and pattern you can imagine. Somewhere in Central Florida, I know there's a whole greenhouse and company that only, propagates caladiums. I don't remember where it was, but I know I went there once. And you can, buy these even online and have a lot of fun. See, this would be great Christmas color to have. Bringing that color and that interesting textures into your shady area. Here's the old standard, Impatiens. It was interesting to me that this book, who I use exclusively though, but sometimes I have an argument with this book. It said does fine in full sun or shade. No, not here in Florida. I mean, they will look like they're dying every afternoon. They're going to do they're going to get very heat stressed in the sun. They're going to do much happier in the shade. Depending on where you live, the sandy areas, you might want to just keep them in pots. They're so easy though to propagate. So you can experiment with them. Every grandma out there cuts a piece off and gives you a piece. My mother used to do that and put it in water and let the roots grow and then transplant them into a pot. I've since heard, you don't have to do that step, that once you put it in the pot, it's going to grow a different type of roots, that when you put it in the water, it didn't really hurt, but it was growing adventitious roots to survive in the water. But those will break off and it'll start growing roots for the soil. You can try it either way. The same impatiens that my mother could only grow in pots in Massarik town, she brought them to me when I lived in the city of Brooksville. I was able to plant them in the ground and they did fine. Again, I was in a lot of clay soil and they did come back. So they can act as perennials, but I would say after the third or fourth year, they're very leggy and just not as attractive anymore. And there's so many different types, and you can get the double ones and the guinea ones. Have a lot of fun with them. Gingers and the shade work very well together. I've had the pine cone ginger in very shady areas. The yard I used to have in the city of Brooksville 15 years ago was extremely shady and was a lot of oak trees around it. So a lot of these shade plants, I can tell you, especially in our backyard, this is what grew there. Pine cone ginger, they put those flowers that literally look like pine cones and you squeeze them and all this perfumey liquid comes out. Those do great. They're so, again, easy to propagate. You could cut a piece off, depending on where you live. If you live in good clay soil like I did there, literally stick it in the ground and it'll probably grow. Or you can put it in some nice potting soil and propagate it. There are other types of gingers too, the spiral gingers, the shell ginger. This is a peacock ginger. It does great in the shade, make like a ground cover. I kind of consider this a southern substitute for hosta. So, you can have a lot of fun with the gingers. The pine cone gingers, though, what they would do is they would freeze. When we had a freeze, they would freeze. And they would turn straw colored. They would never, ever, ever fall down. So, and they would come back. New growth would come back from the roots, but unless I cut back, those stalks, they would have been there forever. So they'll freeze, but they'll freeze in place and turn straw colored. So you do have to cut them back yourself and let the new growth come along. I had these in that same very shady backyard. And the book here says sun to partial shade. I had them in very deep dark shade against the back of the house. And those hummingbirds came along, even back there, to these, red tubular flowers. Again, so easy to grow. The ones that I had, 1,000 years ago, I had a brother-in-law who owned a hardware store in Spring Hill called Bradley Ace Hardware. And he had some of these which were dying. Going against my own advice when I tell you, don't go buy the dying flowers off the rack. But these were, kept further away from any of the others. Anyway, I took home these dying fire spikes. I planted them. They just went crazy. And again, they would freeze. They would freeze in the winter. And I would have to cut them back too, because they get pretty tall. And they would just regenerate in the spring and be beautiful and very low maintenance. And literally some of those I did cut off and stick in the ground there and it would start to grow. So, I had a nice clay-based yard there. That does not happen like that where I live now. I'm only a mile east of 19 in the Royal Highlands, so it's a whole different kind of area. And I haven't tried to grow these there, but maybe, maybe I'll try that again someday. You can certainly take stalks and put them in a pot to propagate. Here again, we love these with the azaleas. It's probably one of the first things that you're going to see blooming like as of January. These camellias, they're pretty amazing plants. When I first started taking note of them, they reminded me of Disney's Alice in Wonderland, the cartoon, the old cartoon, where the queen had her people painting roses on the trees. They would sing, "We're painting roses on the trees." And then I saw these, I'm like, wow, somebody painted roses on the trees. Many different varieties of camellias. If you go to Gainesville, they actually have a park where somebody donated land, and many years ago, it was his passion and hobby to grow these different kind of camellias. So they have transplanted a lot of them in this park. I don't remember the name of it right now, but if you Google, camellias in park in Gainesville, I know you'll find it. It's right pretty much on the campus. There's a greenhouse right beside it too, where they do the horticultural therapy classes. And they don't grow camellias in the greenhouse, but the walk around the park is absolutely gorgeous. Again, if you're going to want to try to grow camellias, having a lower pH, they're going to be much happier. They're going to be happier in those areas where the old-fashioned azaleas grow very well. So now we've covered some of the plants. Mulching is important in the shade, just as it's important, in the sun. So what type of mulch? Basically, you can use many different types of mulch, except we do not encourage the use of cypress mulch for environmental sustainable reasons. They are, even though it's the cheapest and easiest to find, and that's kind of, the market, what they're doing is going to the wetlands, taking down all the young cypress trees, because there's not many old ones left anyway, and immediately shredding them to sell to us as mulch. We don't find that a sustainable practice. So these type of plants that grow quickly and replenish themselves is more of what you want to do. And rubber mulch, we want you to use something that was once alive and that will help enrich the soil. It's very important, though, that you keep that mulch at only 2 to 3 inches. Sometimes we get carried away with mulch, and especially in shady areas, you don't want to do anything that encourages the area to stay wet longer than it should. And having said that, you want to pull it away from the plants. This is a minor version of what we call volcano mulching, but that's burying that poor tree. And especially in shady areas, then the moisture will stay longer. You could have rots, fungal issues there. So do what Jim is doing here. Pull it away from the trunk of that tree. Jim's held several hats here in Hernando and Pasco County. I used to work for him, but now we have similar jobs. Now he is the Master Gardener Coordinator at this time in Pasco County. What he doesn't like me to say is how long ago this picture was taken. It's a long time ago. Now let's talk about lawns in the shade. And sometimes you have a beautiful big oak tree and then you're always complaining, I can't grow any grass under it. So this might be a harsh picture, but sometimes you got to make a choice. Which one do you want? So chances are you're going to choose the tree. But if you insist See, the best thing to do, in my opinion, is keep the tree and put plants that will grow in the shade there. But if you're absolutely insistent, you're going to try out turf, I'll help you a little bit to stretch that period of time out with no guarantees or promises that it's going to last more than a few years. You know, the factors affecting the growth of turf in the shade is the amount of sunlight per day, the intensity, mowing height, fertilization, irrigation, the amount of traffic, and the amount of competing weeds. Some of those weeds are the right plant in the right place. They grow fantastically in the shade. Our turfs, even our most shade tolerant turf, is going to need 5, I'm a lot more comfortable saying 6 hours of sunlight each day. Bahia is not going to do it. I'll tell you that right now. Bahia grass needs absolutely probably 7 to 8 hours of sunlight a day. Bahia and the shade aren't going to get along. Maybe some of these Floritam or other St. Augustine varieties will live a little bit longer in the shade. So keep in mind that sunlight patterns are different during different seasons of the year. You might say, oh yeah, I get 6 hours of shade. Do you now? You know, because we don't have a lot of daylight to begin with. So is it still getting 6 hours of sunlight? Keep that in mind. And the intensity of the sunlight is just as important, not just that it gets some sun. Sunlight intensity is as important as the amount. And the fact is that 4 to 6 hours of low intensity sunlight is not enough to sustain a viable stand of grass. So think about something else to put in there or change the situation so that the sunlight does get in there if the turf is that important to you. I talk all the time. You're probably tired of hearing about how mowing high is so extremely important to have a healthy lawn, 3 to 4 inches. If you are insisting on having that lawn in the shade, you got to mow even higher. A third higher than your normal mowing height. So 3 to 4 inches is normal. Don't think that 1 or 2 is normal for your St. Augustine lawn, your Floritam lawn. 3 to 4 is normal out there in your front yard with lots of sun. You insist on trying to grow it in the shade, you've got to grow it even higher, about a third higher than that. Because that increased height allows for more leaf blade area. Again, I already mentioned that plants kind of change themselves according to their situation. So plants in the shade are going to have darker and wider leaves. So allow your grass to try and have as much area to photosynthesize in that shady area as possible. Fertilizing. Growing turf in the shade requires less fertilization than sunny areas. So, and just remember, too much nitrogen fertilizer depletes those carbohydrates, then actually weakens your turf. Basically, your turf in the shade is under stress. You're growing a stressed plant. So I'm trying to help you have it be less stressed in that shady area. So any single fertilizer application, what they recommend is a pound of nitrogen per 1,000 square feet in the normal part of your lawn. Cut that in half a pound. And probably once a year is more than enough. It also doesn't need as much water. It's not evaporating as much. It's not out in the sun. The best thing to do, I would say, is remove those or turn off, cap off those irrigation heads that are sprinkling in the shade. And when you notice it's getting dry there, when the blades are folding in half, or you walk across them and your footprints remain there for a while, then go out and hand water that area or get an old-fashioned hose and sprinkler when it's your day and, you know, water that area that way. It's going to be a lot happier because in the shade also more chance of fungal issues occurring in the lawn. And so other maintenance practices for your turf in the shade, don't walk on it. As I mentioned, it's a stressed plant because you're trying to, it's not the right plant in the right place. So you can't walk on it. Don't have it in an area that gets walked on a lot. And look out for those weeds. And I would not even use an herbicide, but if you do, be real cautious because there's an increased chance of phytotoxicity, meaning the herbicide will go ahead and kill everything, basically is the easiest way to put it. Why? Because the grass is already under stress, trying to grow in the shade. Do I sound like a fan of growing grass in the shade? I don't mean to be so negative about it. It's just that it will probably be a very frustrating experience for you. This goes for the shade as well as anywhere in your lawn. Avoid the weed and feed products. We have talked about that plenty of times. Here's another option to consider in some of the shadier areas where you feel like nothing will grow. Well, then put some hardscape there. What is hardscape? Anything in your yard that's not a plant, basically. The pavers, the benches, the decks, the chairs, you know, anything that's part of your landscape that is not a living plant. So, and you know, sometimes those shaded areas are perfect places to consider adding those landscape features, you know, some pavers, a little table, some chairs. You want to sit in the shade, don't you? The plants might not want to, but you do. So, you know, that's another thing to consider for those hard to grow areas. Now, there are some things that are going to grow in abundance in your shaded areas. Here's some invasive non-native plants that really love the shade. We talked about the ferns. And here is, yeah, some of the sword ferns that, you know, the names to avoid, but it's going to be growing already in your yard and you're not going to ask it its scientific name. You know, just know if it's everywhere and you pull it up and has those orange balls on the roots, it's not the plant you want to propagate everywhere. Here's that coral ardesia that I mentioned that looks a lot like wild coffee. I don't have pictures here, but again, if you get the PDF of this, then you can cross-reference what some of these, you know, look like, and find pictures of them and see if you already have them. And if you want to discuss why I have some of them here, if you look back on my classes, you can see some classes on invasive plants as well. So these plants, as far as the plant goes, they believe they're the right plant in the right place because they're thriving there. But the problem is they don't have any checks and balances. They're not in their natural area. They have not evolved to a point to have things that eat them or, you know, keep them under control. Therefore, they spread so much, they outcompete our native species, and that becomes a whole ecological problem. Here are some of the resources that I used aside from this book right here. You can go to the University of Florida and just do a Google search. Shade plants for your garden, UF. Here are some of the sites I found, and you can, then there's links within the links, you know, to look at the specific plants that you can find. Also, a lot of these native plants, I also relied on the Florida Native Plant Society's website regarding where to find some of those native plants. I don't have the link on here, but you can go to the Florida Association of Native Nurseries, FANN.org. And they'll have a list of native nurseries in your area. You can call around, see if those plants are available. Pay attention to the Florida Native Plant Society in your county. Hernando County has one. Find out when they have different plant sales. You know, they're a great resource. Chances are you're going to walk, if you walk into your big box store garden center, you're going to go on the world's worst scavenger hunt to try and find a native plant. It'll be very depressing. You will probably find muley grass, which that grows in the sun, maybe some kunchi, and maybe some, which I didn't have on here, dwarf yopon holly, just happy sun or shade. That's probably it. You want to try and find some of the others. You really need to get hooked up with the people who know and promote native Florida plants, and that would be your Florida Native Plant Society. I have classes coming up. I'm not going to have a class like this until after Christmas. You know, things get hectic for all of us. I will still have things going on. I did a secret thing yesterday. Nobody knows about it. I'm giving you a secret pre-recorded class, and it should be available today on YouTube, Hernando County Government YouTube. I will also provide the link on my Facebook page. Exploring Lichen. A friend of mine, Alice Mary Herden, put the presentation together. She's an education specialist at the Chinsegat Conservation Center and a wildlife photographer. And she got excited to learn more about lichen, and she did, you know, this research, and she presented it. It's fairly short. So if you want to it helped me. There were lots of things I didn't know, like the names of some of these different lichen and things. So watch that when it's available. Have the kids watch it, because it really is pretty fascinating. Then on the 29th, I'll be back with this kind of regular class with a budget conscious yard care, because we'll all be broke by the 29th. And then in January, I'm going to do some classes with Dr. Lester. I did one last week on what could go wrong, and we're following up on that. On the 14th, he's going to talk specifically about what could go wrong with home edible crops. And then on January 19th and February 2nd, he wants to do a class really on diagnosing specific problems. Like, you see this leaf with these spots, you know, what does that mean? Since he has the doctorate of plant medicine, we're going to let him do that, but it should be very, very helpful. I'll be having other classes as well. If you, excuse me, if you have ever been interested in getting a rain barrel or a compost bin, we're going to have a great one in January. It'll be a combination between Florida Friendly Landscaping, Solid Waste, Hernando County Solid Waste, and Hernando County Environmentally Sensitive Lands. We're going to meet at Fickett Hammock Preserve. That's off of Centralia Road here in Hernando. Have a rain barrel workshop outside. Have a compost workshop outside. And then Mike Singer, who's he works with environmentally sensitive lands, will take us for a walk through the Hammock Preserve. It'll be a lot of fun. And that's a Saturday. I just want to let you know, if you're in Hernando County and you are thinking about getting a rain barrel, I might have a just rain barrels class at another time in January too, an inside one during the week. It'll be limited the amount of people because it'll be inside, but beginning February, the prices of the rain barrels will be going up. I mean, nothing we want to do, but you know, our cost is going up. So January, it's the last time to get a $50 rain barrel. If you are a customer of Hernando County Utilities for your water, you'll get a one-time rebate of $25 on your water bill. So essentially your first barrel costs you $25. I don't think you can even build one, you know, from scratch for that amount of money. How do you sign up for these? You email me, that's the first step. So I'll have another slide here again with my email address. Now I'm having one on this, not this Monday, 2 Mondays, December 20th. If you happen to be a Hernando County School Board employee, this one's for you, and I have very limited spaces left. So ask me, you can email me and ask me about that one as well. When the prices go up in February, don't kick yourself too hard because we're going to put the rebate up a little bit as well for those who are customers. At least we can help you with that. No, I don't know the exact price yet, but that is going up. But I just know trying to get bids, and all the prices are rising. So if you have any questions, if you're interested in a rain barrel workshop, compost workshop, here's the first place to start, LillyB at hernandocounty.us. If you're listening from outside of Hernando County and you want to learn about rain barrels, you want to learn about composting, but you don't necessarily want the items in your hands, the compost bins are free, but to Hernando County residents only. If you're listening from elsewhere and you just want to hear about it, again, email me. I will send you links where you can watch programs that Dr. Lester and I have done and learn basically the same thing, but you just won't get the items. You can do that if you live in Hernando County as well, but you will still won't get the items. You have to pay for a rain barrel and attend a workshop and live in Hernando County to get a compost bin. I believe that is it. Yes. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Again, please email me if you have any questions. Let me see if I have any. Nope, nothing in the chat. All right. Thank you, everybody. And Dr. Lester and I will continue through most of December, probably not Christmas week, but every Thursday at 10, we participate in a virtual plant clinic. And you'll find the link to that also on my Facebook page. So, and with that, you get to, well, you can't call in, but you can chat in any question at all regarding gardening, catch us by surprise, see if you can stump us. And we just have a good time talking about it. So thank you, everybody, and have very good holidays. And I will see you again in this format on December 29th. Have a great day.